Let's look at some common errors that might occur when you're trying to write algorithms using list iteration. The most common error that students make is forgetting to put the colon after the for statement. It's really easy to forget because it's just like a fiddly little character and it's easy to overlook. Let's see what would happen if we edited our program so that it doesn't include that colon where it's supposed to be located. When we try to run the software, Python will tell us invalid syntax, and then it highlights the area right where that colon is supposed to be. Anytime it's highlighting information at the end of your line, it probably means you're missing something in that location. And usually it's a punctuation mark. It's something like a double quote, or in this case, a colon, something where Python's expecting there to be a symbol and it's not there, and it realizes that it's not there when it gets to the end of processing that line. And again, to fix it up, you just put the colon back in, easy peasy, works great. Let's also type the program from scratch and see what it looks like if you don't have a colon in there. So if I forget the colon here, when I press enter to move to the next line, Python didn't indent the way I expected it to. I wrote print score plus 2 here. I can see that's not indented. But in my mind, I'm thinking, I want that to be the step that's repeated, and I know it needs to be indented if I need to repeat it. And the fact that Python didn't indent it is a tip-off that tells me I forgot a character on the previous line, something that would signal to Python that I'm using a repetition structure. So to fix this up, I always go to the beginning of my line, press backspace, then I can add my missing character, the colon, and when I press enter, now Python knows I'm using a repetition structure, so it automatically indents that print line. And that helps me to debug my program and make my corrections quickly. If you ever are expecting Python to indent something and it just doesn't when you press enter, that's a tip-off that you're missing a character, and you can go back and fix that up. All right, let's look at another common error. Another common error is not indenting consistently. So sometimes when students are writing programs, they kind of like write part of it first, and then they come back later and write a different piece of it, and they end up with things that aren't quite lined up when you indent them. So we'll do something like print score plus 2, and then here's a message. And they want both of those things to happen inside their for loop, but Python's going to be very confused because the indentation's not consistent here. Let's see what happens when we try to run this. So when we try to run it, Python gives us an error that says unindent does not match any outer indentation level. Basically, that's saying Python's real confused because you used multiple indentation levels and it doesn't know what they all mean. They're not all matching with individual repetition statements. And it'll give you the error message on the end of the line that it finds is inconsistently indented. So if that ever happens to you, the easiest way to fix it, again, is to go to the beginning of the line, press backspace a few times so that you're up on the previous line, and then when you press enter, Python will automatically indent it so it's perfectly lined up with the previous line. Then you'll be able to run it, and Python will print out the contents of your algorithm or carry out your algorithm's instructions successfully because it understands that both of these items are the algorithm that go with this repetition statement. Another common error is not indenting all of the instructions that should be applied to each of the list items. So suppose that we wanted to print out this here's a message command, and then we also wanted to print out score plus 2. But for some reason, when we were writing the program, we didn't indent the score plus 2. Let's see what Python will do. So this is syntactically correct. It doesn't cause any type of syntax error or runtime error. It just doesn't work the way we meant it to. If we meant it to type out, here's a message, and then one of the list items, that's not what's happening. It's just printing, here's a message, and repeating that 10 times. Then it prints out the number 10, and then the whole list. So why is it doing that? Well, it's printing out the message here's a message 10 times because that's what it sees as the body or the algorithm that this loop applies. It doesn't realize that these other statements you have over here might be part of what you thought of as the algorithm because you didn't communicate that they go with the repetition structure by using the appropriate indentation. So if something's not indented, Python just does that one time in your program. It's not part of your looping structure. So in this example, it printed out, here's a message 10 times, then it printed the number 10. That's where you printed the last score plus 2. So that's the 8 plus 2 is 10. And then finally, it printed the whole quiz score list, the 7, 6, 5, and so on. So if we want to make sure that it does both of these activities, printing here's a message and also printing out the score plus 2, we have to make sure both items are indented. Then Python will know both of these items are part of the algorithm to apply to each of the scores in the quiz score list. That will change how our program behaves so that it interleaves the message and the value of the updated score. Let's test out your knowledge of how to apply list iteration to a list. Suppose that you have a list that stores 10 positive integers. Try to write a program that iterates over the list and finds the perfect square of each number. A perfect square just means the number raised to the second power. So you're going to take the square of each value. So if the list has 985, 421, 711, 36, the program's output should be 81 because that's 9 times 9, and then 64 because that's 8 times 8, and 25 because that's 5 times 5, 16 is 4 times 4, 4 is 2 times 2, 1 is 1 times 1, 49 is 7 times 7, 121 is 11 times 11, 9 is 3 times 3, and 36 is 6 times 6. Think about how you would make that calculation and have it print the items. In your program, before you iterate over the list, welcome the user to the program. And after you iterate over the list, print a message that says, thanks for using this software. Take a couple minutes, pause your video, and see if you can write that program. I'm going to start a new file for my solution. Let's think about what we want to do. We want to have a welcome message at the beginning of our program. That's always a good idea when you're writing something, especially if it's going to be shared with another person and they're going to use your software. Including a welcome message helps them to understand the purpose of this particular project. So we're going to include a welcome message. Then we want to iterate over the list. We'll also need to create the list, right? Create the initial list. Then we want to iterate over the list to apply our algorithm, and we want to apply the perfect square algorithm. And then finally, at the end of the program, we wanted to print out the list and also print a thank you message at the end. So first, let's tackle step number 1, the welcome message. To display a message, we just want to use the print command to print information to standard output. So something like, welcome to the perfect square program. Next, we want to create our initial list of values. I'm just going to call it list. And we said we're going to store 985, 42, 17, 11, 3, 6. Cool. Next, we want to iterate over the list to apply our perfect square algorithm. So we're going to use the for instruction. I'm going to say for item in list, colon. And now as soon as I press enter after the colon, it's going to know that my next statement is the algorithm to apply to that list item. So we'll indent that. And I wanted to calculate the value of the list item times itself. And our project description doesn't say whether we want to store the values back into the list or just print them out. I'm going to assume that we want to just print it out. Say print item times item. That actually takes care of printing the list. I'll put that up here. That's like part of what I'm doing in my list algorithm. And then finally, I want to end the program with a thank you message. I want to display that to standard output. Print, thank you for using this software. I think that's everything that we wanted to include. Let's test it out and see if we have any errors. Looks like we are good. Did we get the expected output? Yes, we got the numbers 81 through 36. It's the perfect square of each of the individual items in the collection, and it's prefaced by a welcome message and ends with a thank you message. At this point, you should now understand the concept of list iteration, be able to create algorithms to iterate through a list to process operations for each individual list item, and know the Python statements to iterate through a list.